can you help me sleep better, please? Hey guys, Howard Cooper here, and today I wanted to share with you some stuff that often comes up in my clinic when I'm seeing clients one-on-one. They come in and they say, Howard, can you help me sleep better, please? Because sleep has become a big issue for them, and this is particularly true when people struggle with anxiety as well and often find themselves trying to sleep but are ruminating or get to sleep easily but then wake up at night. So I want to share with you a bunch of thoughts that may really help. And by the way, they probably won't be what you think. People come and see me and they say things like, I've been to see the sleep experts and I've read all about what I should be doing and it's not working. What are you going to tell me that's different from all of that? Well, I'm going to be honest with you, and maybe this will ruffle some feathers, but I am not a big fan of what the sleep experts supposedly say about getting a good night's sleep. Apparently you should use your bed only for lovemaking and for sleep. Okay, all right. What else? What else you got, sleep experts? No screen time for like 2 or 3 hours before going to bed. And they talk about the chemicals that are created with the harsh light that stimulates the brain to make it more awake, and that's what you want to avoid, so we shouldn't be doing that. Have a nice bath before bedtime, because as you come out, your body temperature drops. It can help you go into a nice comfortable sleep. Dim the lights in a particular way so that, my body is stimulated into relaxation mode and calmness for at least an hour before I even attempt to go to sleep. Take up yoga, do meditation. Here's the problem. I have seen people who have been so sleep experted to death that they now approach bedtime and they're already struggling with anxiety, and now what they've got is a whole list of 1,000,001 things that they have to do perfectly and correctly in order to be able to ensure that they have a night's sleep. And the chances of them doing all of these things are nigh impossible. Oh no, shit, I accidentally looked at a screen. It was within 50 minutes of going to bed. Now it's going to ruin my sleep. Instead of making them more relaxed and them just allowing themselves to have the experience of sleep, I've seen people become really concerned with sleep routines and following expert advice in order to ensure that it's perfect. Otherwise, how else would we sleep? But I think it's important to take a step back and to start looking at this a little differently. And I don't buy into any of that stuff. And quite frankly, to me, it's nonsense. Well, I say it's nonsense. I think they're coming from a different angle. Let me explain. The sleep expert's job is often to study sleep and to find the optimal conditions, chemically looking at what can we do to trigger sleep in our brains and how can we slow our system down so that we can sleep easily. So it would make sense, would it not, if we're struggling to sleep, to go and look at this information. But here's the thing. Before people had these sleep issues, most of us have had periods in our life, maybe when we were young, where we weren't doing any of those things that the sleep experts were saying, and we were sleeping. We were sleeping just fine, because it hadn't even struck us as sleeping would be difficult, or sleeping would be tough. If you stop and think about it, sleeping is one of those things we are born doing easily. Going to sleep is the easiest thing that we've ever done. We just know how to do it. And then all that happens is we have a few nights about where we're doing anxiety, and then we get this little germ of an idea, don't we? The germ of an idea goes something along the lines of, oh shit, maybe I've got a sleep issue. And then the next day we start going, well, what if tonight I'm lying in bed and awake and I can't sleep, and maybe it's a problem, and maybe, and oh God, what? And then we get really absorbed into that story. And if we get too absorbed into the story of I have a sleep issue, then we start to get tense and anxious. And we start looking for all of the solutions that I must need to do in order to be able to sleep effectively or to get some sleep. So, well, in that case, I must have the bath and drink the cocoa. And if you get then really absorbed in that story, that you begin to take it as real and you don't just see it as, no, these are just thoughts about I'm not going to sleep, then your body begins to create that and you get tense. And guess what happens when you get tense? It's harder to relax. Anything that gives you more tension around the whole sleep issue ultimately doesn't work effectively, right? So when the sleep experts say you've got a whole list of stuff that you've got to do in order to sleep effectively, there becomes a whole tension around, have I followed the instructions correctly? Will this work? Won't it work? What if I don't? That in and of itself causes you to go inside and create more tension. Now, I'm not suggesting that the sleep experts have no merit. What I'm saying is their job is to look at best practice of what are the conditions to create the perfect night's sleep chemically in an ideal world. But if you're going from trouble sleeping and you're not sleeping at all, and your leap is, I want to go from not sleeping and having problems sleeping to gold standard sleep experience every single night without fail, you might not be doing, it might be too unachievable and set you up for failure. I'll give you a good example. Someone came to see me who's having terrible sleep issues, and they said they just can't sleep. They can't sleep. They lie in bed, tossing, turning, and then they end up going downstairs, turning the TV on, watching TV, and they fall asleep in front of the TV. I said, well, why don't you just get a TV in your room and watch it in bed and fall asleep there? No, they went. I mean, they were just shocked, abhorrently. Can't do that. I was like, well, why not? Well, because the sleep experts tell me I shouldn't have watched TV in my room. It's bad for sleep. Okay, but here's the thing. When they're watching TV at 4 a.m, they stop paying attention to that story of I can't sleep. They get out of their own head in such a way that their body naturally just takes over. So why not use that? Stick a TV in the room and watch it. If that gives you focus outside of yourself so that it helps not to get too caught up in those stories of, I'm not going to be able to sleep and I have sleep issues, then fine. Go ahead and do that for a time. And if that helps you get to sleep, do it. And okay, if you want to work at some point in the future towards gold standard best sleep practice, as recommended by sleep experts, then do that. That's fine. But do it from a place of getting some rest. All right, like if watching the TV screen helps you somewhat, not ideal, but at least you're getting some sleep. So my view is a very pragmatic one. It's all about taking away and removing psychological pressure. Because when you stop putting yourself under such pressure to have certain experiences, the whole thing gets easier. There's a great book by Matthew Syed called Bounce, and Matthew Syed's an ex-table tennis champion. And he talks about, I think I may be misquoting this, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. He talks about being a final of a big event, World Championship or whatever coming up, and he totally choked. And choking in the sports context is where you play really well, but then a match or an event comes up that really matters, and they go inside and they say to themselves, I have to play well. This is so important. This is the moment that matters. And that internal demand of this is the moment that it really matters creates so much pressure in the system. They're reduced to playing like rank amateurs. No shots get back. They can't. And he talks really eloquently about this idea of being in a flow state when you're doing performance or sports. The same, I think, is said of sleeping. Sleeping is one of those things that when you were born, you do effortlessly and easily. And then all that happens is you begin to overthink the whole process, and now it gets hard. Who's had the experience where maybe you're having a patch where you're sleeping fine and sleep's easy, but then you have a big event coming up the next day, an exam or something important or something you have to get up early for, and what do? You say to yourself, I have to go to bed early because I have to have a good night's sleep. I have to. I must. And the moment you start saying to yourself, I have to get some sleep and I must get some sleep, and you feel that internal pressure to do it, how many times do you ever have struggled to sleep that night? Why? Because you made the stakes too high. This demand of I have to get some sleep immediately so that I can have this energy the next day, that becomes the thing that keeps you awake. You're inside now trying to go, okay, I've got to sleep. Come on. Kind of reminds me of a guy who came to see me. And this guy was like, everything he'd ever achieved in his life was through sheer force of will. He told me proudly. He was the CEO of a big organization. He'd made it happen. And he was used to getting his own way, and he was used to making things happen through force of will. And he was really intense, had this kind of strange, tense glare at me. And I said, listen, maybe we should start with some relaxation. And he went, oh yeah, I'm going to be the best at relaxing out of everyone that you've ever seen relax before. Watch this. And he couldn't do it. Because there are some things you can't do through force of will. Going to sleep is one of those things. Sleep happens, it just unfolds. But if you're demanding or doing things where you're saying, I have to get some sleep tonight, and I have to stick to my list of prescribed sleep expert advice in order to do it, and I must do it perfectly, then you're likely to be approaching the whole thing from a place of tension, which is going to get in the way. So I'm going to suggest some things to you that may challenge your thinking a little bit, and I invite you to be open. From the perspective of, if all the stuff that you've been doing hasn't been working, which led you to click on this video to find out what this was all about, then perhaps the stuff that you have been doing is not where the solution lies, and maybe this could help. Thinking differently. I'd like you to do an exercise right now. This is an exercise I've done a few times on my YouTube channel, but I'd like you to do it right now in this context, which is close your eyes and just say to yourself in your mind, I have to relax right now. In your mind, I have to relax right now, and notice how that feels. And now, instead, say to yourself, I'd like to relax. I'd like to relax. What's the difference in feeling when you do that? Now, I've done this a lot with people over the years, and often people say, well, when I said I have to relax right now, there's a demand. My body gets more tense. It's harder to relax. Whereas when I say I'd like to relax, it's just more a case of, well, I'd like it to happen. It kind of feels easier. The difference is that when you say I'd like to relax, I have a preference to relax, there's also an acceptance deep down that you don't have to. It's not something that's mandatory. It doesn't have to be a certain way, which means there's no internal pressure. Makes it more likely to happen. Now, one of the things that I would get you to challenge if you have anxiety and you have trouble sleeping is really challenge the, do you have to sleep? Do you have to get some sleep? Now, okay, right. I know there's going to be resistance. I can feel it already. You're probably going, of course, don't be silly. We humans have to sleep. But let's just narrow the scope for a moment. I'm not talking about for the rest of your life. I'm talking about just tonight. Do you have to get some sleep? Now, again, there's likely to be some resistance. You're going to be going, well, yeah, because I'll be tired tomorrow. Well, hold on a moment. Is there actually a universal law that says you mustn't be tired tomorrow? No. It's not like gravity, without, like, regardless of whether I want gravity to exist or not, it just exists. There's nothing I can do about it. Well, it is possible for humans to be tired tomorrow. It's possible. And if you're saying I mustn't be tired, I have to be awake tomorrow, I have to be fully alert, then a bit like the exercise with, say to yourself, I'd like to relax, or I must relax. If you're saying to yourself, I have to be awake tomorrow, you're implying that there's no other alternative, that it's not humanly possible to be tired. And it is humanly possible. I know you'd like to be awake, but guess what? If you say, if you think of it as, I'd like to have energy tomorrow, rather than I have to, then you're accepting that it doesn't have to be a certain way. Likely, it helps. Likely, the pressure is alleviated. It makes it more likely to happen. The moment you're willing to look inside and go, okay, I know I'd like to sleep, but no, I don't have to. I'm willing not to. That's different from, now I know that you'd like to sleep. I get that. That's a deep preference. What I really want for you is to challenge, does it have to be? Is there a universal law that says you have to sleep? All humans have to sleep every night. If you can let go of these internal demands that you have to, then it likely leads you to a place where you're much more grounded and it's much more likely to happen. Essentially, you get out of your own way. This is one of the biggest pieces that can make the biggest difference in terms of your sleep patterns. If you can begin to challenge that demand that you have to sleep, you're likely to be able to get to sleep much more effectively. As always, I hope this has been useful, and there'll be future stuff on sleep-related issues and some practical strategies too, but this is one of the biggest pieces that, again, if you can get your head around, it's going to make one of the biggest differences. If you want to throw us a like, that would be great. If you want to share this content or comment on it, let me know how you're getting on. Your engagement really helps YouTube know that this is content worth putting out far and wide, so really appreciate you tuning in. Any questions, let me know.